But if we start electing folks that allow us to go back to feeling comfortable, or allow privileged folks to go back to being comfortable, the speed of change that is necessary will decline. And we cannot afford that.
Flipping the table.
This is Michael, and it's Season 2 of Flipping the Table. This is a podcast featuring honest conversations about food, farming, and the future. I do this because I'm inspired by all the people you will hear. Some of them I've known for decades, and others I've just met. But each of them are creating the knowledge, the food enterprises, farms, and ranches that will make for a future that works better for us all. Today, I'm again in dialogue with Miakoda, a lifelong bridge builder across what they call the dismembered sectors of society. They joined me early in Season 1 for a conversation on the topics of race and privilege. It has proved one of the most heard and compelling dialogues of that first season. Miakoda uses they-them pronouns, is the founder and lead steward of Fierce Allies, a training program and community of practice, catalyzing dynamics of power and privilege towards equity and justice. They are a two-spirited descendant of indigenous people, as well as forced migrants and immigrants to this continent. They have over 2 decades of experience as an executive and consultant, utilizing tools from the fields of restorative justice, somatic trauma healing, and embodied and popular education to facilitate conflict transformation, leadership development, and equitable organizational change. I came to know Miakoda and work with them in a project involving Roots of Change and People's Grocery back in 2011, which was funded by the Packard Foundation. Miakoda became my coach and mentor during a process of awakening to my whiteness, patriarchal privilege, and the challenge of healing the divides in a society shackled by structural racism and sexism. I have participated in several trainings that they have led and have been deeply impacted by the healing they have spawned in groups of mixed race, gender, and sexual orientation. Miakoda is a master at aiding people to cross the divides that harm all of us and lead to unjustifiable killings, particularly of Black, Indigenous, and people of color. In light of the continued killing, most glaringly and recently revealed by Officer Derek Chauvin's emotionless murder of George Floyd, I felt a need and a desire to dialogue with Miakoda again. This time, with a specific focus on how our nation might heal from the centuries of harm resulting from racism, hate, and the coldness quite visible in Officer Chauvin's face in the video of those tragic 8 minutes and 46 seconds. It is a heavy topic, but a necessary and critical question for our time. Welcome, Miakoda. Well,
Hi, Michael. How are you?
I'm hanging in. How are you? How are you? That is the question I
have. Not an easy question to answer. So do you want me to answer that now, or do we want to dig into that in a little
bit? I would be curious. I am interested in how you are feeling.
All right. Let's dig in. I'm going to take a couple breaths, because I want to be as authentic as I can in this conversation, because it feels important to be that in this moment. So if you will indulge me. I am many things in this moment. My typical answer when people ask me that is, under the circumstances, I'm doing really well. And that is true. And I right now I have a lot stirring that's really kicked up in the last 18 hours or so that have me somewhat disoriented in a good way. As I think you've heard me say, Michael, our work is very much about disorientation for new orientation. So I have been catalyzed into a space of disorientation that I trust will allow me to arrive in a more powerful, more resilient place of orientation. But right now, a lot of my comfort zone has been shaken loose, and I think ready perhaps to drop. But now I'm in that in-between stage of discomfort that is what's necessary for change. So that's how I'm doing.
Oh, my right temple is pounding. Before we started recording, we were sharing sensations, and as you shared more, my temple pounded even more because I think I am in a similar space of, and I think it's a combination of COVID and then the killing and the demonstrations. It's really, and the world as we know it has shattered, and that brings up a lot of feeling in me.
I'm curious, when you say that, what are the feelings that come with that for you? Because I have a funny feeling they might be different than the ones that come up for me.
I'll bet. For me, I think there is a fear of the future and what could happen. The bad things that could happen in terms of people harming each other more, or a continued path of division. I think that I'm feeling pressure in the different nonprofits I work with to work with the white folks of privilege in those groups to move to a new place. And there's tension around that, like how hard do I push? So I've had some fear, but I've also felt like dignified or grounded in moving in that direction and not backing down. And people are open more than I've ever seen them. So that gives me some hope that I feel. And I guess I feel confusion a little bit around what the right moves are. I mean, that's why I kind of I reached out to you, is like, what is the right move here? You know, how do you be part of solution or healing? I don't have all the answers, so that's why I wanted to talk.
Yeah. Can I share how I'm feeling?
Please.
And then can we make sure we come back to that question, what is the right move here? I don't have an exact answer to that, but I have a thought that might help orient us in a direction that I think might be worth exploring.
Good.
So the question, what was the thing? I'm sorry. There's a lot going on here. So you were about the change that's happening and how are we feeling about all the changes that are happening. You know, I have to say, I hear from a lot of folks a fear of the unknown of the future and sort of a longing for, and this is not necessarily what I heard you say, but a longing from others for the relative stability of the past, which really the stability of that is only because it's familiar, right? Because I don't know that our past was particularly stable, certainly more so for privileged folks, it's stable.
Right.
And so now they're starting to feel the instability of the system. And then I think about for myself as a, queer person of color, I have no longing to the going back. The back has never been good. It has never been good to me and my people. And I'm clear that more lives will be lost in pursuit of something that might be good And I have the sense from a lot of my frontline allies that we would rather go down as martyrs fighting for change than die the slow death we've been living under the system as it has been existing.
Yes.
And that's, it's a hard reality to feel that and to say that, and it feels incredibly true.
Wow. When you said it, my chest tightened. I could feel my chest tighten.
It's interesting. My chest opens as I say that.
Uh-huh.
It's, and I think it's part of what's happening for me. Can I share what stirred me the other day that has me in this disorientation?
Yeah, please.
So since the Black Lives Matter protests in response to the George Floyd and many more than the ones that people are just naming. There's so many local ones. But the state government sanctioned violence against Black and Brown people, the new wave of publicly recognized pandemic of murders. Since that has happened, many of my white friends have been reaching out, acknowledging their complacency, acknowledging, calling themselves in as better allies, checking in on me and my infant, Isel. And then last night I got a letter from my oldest friend in the world, wife. And they're both white. And I've known Sammy since I was 3, and Sammy's he's just family, and he and his family have been better family to me in many ways than my own blood family. And they're not racist, and they've never been anti-racist.
They're not racist and they've never been anti-racist. I just want to underline that, okay, because I wanted to hear that, okay?
Yeah, so it's an important distinction.
Yes.
They've never been racist,
mm-hmm.
and they've also never been anti-racist.
Mm-hmm.
And in this letter, she acknowledged that. She finally recognized that in all this time that she's been loving me, that not being racist has not been enough, and that she's part of the problem in the fact that she's allowed that to be enough for her for the last however many years she's known me. And how this moment is calling her in to upping her accountability. And it was a really incredibly thoughtful letter. And what it opened for me was the recognition that in order for me to be in relationship with, I would say, literally 98% of the white people in my chosen family, and I have a lot of white people in my chosen family. And these are the people I love and trust the most in the world. In order to survive their leaning more towards I'm not racist than leaning into I am anti-racist, that I've had to be in a contraction in order to love them.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Because if I actually felt how hurt I was by that I would have trouble staying in relationship with them. And when she wrote this letter, and I actually got to take the deep breath of like, oh, wow, I could actually now feel in relationship to you, which means I can actually talk about some of the stuff that's actually really, really here for me, and not always have to give the answer in response to how are you? Oh, in the face of circumstances, I'm doing fine. Because what's actually here is probably too much for you to bear. And if I bring it to you, will probably ignite so much of your white fragility that then I will have to take care of you.
Mm-hmm.
And to just recognize, like I recognize that in my work and in relationship to clients. And when I'm professionally on, I can navigate that. I know how to navigate that. And there's something about recognizing how much, first of all, recognizing that I didn't even know I was doing this. And then recognizing how much I have been in contraction in relationship to my family, my chosen family members, and how much that costs me to not feel. Because I know that when I feel, with all of the trauma work that I've done in my own healing journey, I love to feel. I don't care what the emotion is. That's why I do the work that I do, which brings up so much emotion in the room. When people are feeling, I feel safe. I trust that part of our body enormously. I don't trust when we don't feel, because when we don't feel, then we're actually not using all of our intelligence, all of our somatic intelligence to guide our choices. And when people are afraid to feel, they feel dangerous to me, because then they're only operating from their head. And so, yeah, just realizing how much it has been costing me to not feel in order to be able to love people that I love. I mean, I love these beings and they love me. That I can't even describe. It would be 10 podcasts for me to describe the expressions of love that I have felt, that I know that these people have for me and my child. As for many of them, I'm one of the few Black people that they have a really intimate relationship to. And I'm now in an inquiry for myself on what is my now call into action in terms of calling them in, which I know it is not my responsibility. There's enough resources out there that they should be calling themselves in. But for me to be in integrity with myself, I can't just contract anymore now that I know that I'm contracting. So that's my disorientation.
Wow.
With it right now. Yeah.
It's powerful. It's powerful. And I'm at a loss for words, actually. I don't know where to go from now in this conversation.
Well, you know, the thing that comes to mind for me of what I need my chosen family, of which you are a part of, and you know that, yes, Michael?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah. There's really, in a lot of ways, that's the appropriate response, is there is nowhere to go. The invitation is to be with it. You know, I just spent a couple days literally camping on my friend's land because I needed to get out of the city. So they put up a tent for me. I slept in their backyard with my infant. They had a separate bathroom that I could use. So I was still social distancing, physical distancing from them, but on their property so they could all kind of be around us and I could see them. And it's interesting. They were at they go to a lot of social actions, big environmental activists, and the social justice component is very personal for them. And these are, again, white chosen family. And during the time that I was there, particularly the mom, who is the one I knew first, you know, and she feels like a sister to me. I'm realizing I didn't get to really spend any time with her because she was at multiple actions. And after reading this letter and feeling into that, I'm realizing, as proud as I am of them for going to all these actions and showing up and participating in that level and that area of change, for me, what would have been more meaningful would be for them to have actually been with me, and for there to have somehow, and I don't know how we would have facilitated it, but that there had been some space for them to actually just hear how hard this is for me, this moment. as a single mom of a 6-month-old brown child during a pandemic where there's no escaping now, because at least it's not like anything that's happening now is actually that much worse than it's been. It's just the fact that that people see it. And now there's more and more room for us to be calling it out. But the level of violence has been here. Mm-hmm. And perhaps it's everything's been made more overt and more permission from Trump's invitation for violence and racism, both in his behavior and his words. But the fact that, last night before I went to bed, I went for a walk around the neighborhood to try to kind of calm these Ellen to some sleep. And literally every third biker that came down the street, I live in Berkeley, and there are lots of people on bikes, every third person had a Black Lives Matter banner, t-shirt, poster. I think there was an activism. Again, I live in Berkeley, so there's something every day. Mm-hmm. So I think people were coming from that. So there was that. So I couldn't. So then that was the constant reminder, right? That the assault on my people is happening. And the helicopter is up above, probably because there was an action going on. But pretty much since this has all started, there has been a helicopter, one, if not several, above Berkeley, pretty much all the time. Yet another reminder. And there is something about not being able to have moments of reprieve from the reality of how racist our society is and how painful and hard it is to be a person of color in this society. It's at a whole new level. And as someone who has also done a lot of work with survivors of sexual assaults, being that I am one of those, consent is such a big part of that conversation, learning about consent. And I'm just so present to how little room there is for people of color to consent to interfacing with the conversation of race in America. It has been imposed upon us. It is a constant, it is a hegemonic imposition on us 24/7. We do not really have the option of ever escaping it, to take a vacation from it. The privilege that privileged folks often have. They can get into it when they want to, go to the protest and go home and have a good dinner and feel good about having gone to the protest. And we don't, it's never gone. It's never gone. And the only choice that we have is we either choose to disassociate or we choose to feel it. And I'm clear that part of my own practice right now is choosing to feel it, because I'm not going to choose to disassociate. There are ways to choose to disassociate skillfully, so I'm not saying that that's a bad choice. But for me, knowing my level of resilience and my commitment to change and my capacity to be part of the solution, that would be me exercising my privilege in an unskillful way. So I choose to feel it. And that's at a whole new level for me, literally from this one letter.
Wow. And
part of me feels scared, although part of me knows that there's no place I feel safer than feeling. And I think part of what's making it scary is that I've never had to do it with an infant as a single mom who's sheltering in place alone. Mm-hmm. So the guiding point of that was the being with it. I think I appreciate you, Michael, for all the work that you've done and that you've arrived at a place that you can say, honestly, I don't know where to go, and not feel like you have to fill the silence with something smart, or even as a podcast host, because that's real.
Mm-hmm.
And part of the reason I was willing to have this conversation with you today, despite the fact that I feel pretty well. And I can share a sensation. It almost feels like my lower belly is breathing, and the air is, it's like cool air is going up and just kind of cooling off my abdomen and my chest that feel kind of warm, almost like they've been like tucked in under a blanket, and like it's like the first breath of the morning kind of thing, like cool and refreshing.
Hey, may I ask, I have a question for you. Would you share with folks why you teach and how you teach people to feel, and what the feel sensations in their body, and what the value, the teaching that is?
Yeah, sure. It's important to say that this the practice that I use, that I've shared with you, Michael, called the dignity practice, is an adaptation of many different practices. I think a lot of people would say it strongly resembles the centering practice that generous somatics does, and it does strongly resemble that. I was doing something similar to that before I worked with generous somatics, and they gave me some key pieces, including the use of the term dignity.
Mm-hmm.
And for those who know that practice, I often invite them to listen to also what's different about this, because this it's different. There's some differences that make it more central to the type of work that we do. Michael, does it make sense for me to explain it or to sort of lead it? What do you feel like would be the most useful for your audience?
Well, you know what? I trust you. Do what you feel, what feels good to you in this moment with it. I'm open.
Yeah. Well, let me just put a little bit of context. The reason we do it is a foundational practice. And when I say that, like, we literally, as you know, Michael, we start every session with a dignity practice. We close every session with a dignity practice. And then the invitation is for people to be practicing it throughout every exercise, every practice, every conversation, as a resourcing tool. And the idea is that what it's trying to help resource us to do is to, in a lot of ways, it's the things I've been talking about, uncontract, to not disassociate, to be able to like bring the whole body on board and let the body, our bodies are brilliant. Our bodies are so brilliant. Our bodies, okay, so yeah, let me say a little bit before if I decide to read it. But, as an evolving species, humans, we're a species, and all species are constantly evolving. And things we don't need, we lose. And things that we do need, we keep. And this frontal lobe that we've developed, the brain that makes us so intelligent, that supposedly separates us from so many other species, I'm not yet convinced that it is a beneficial adaptation. I think it's still an experimental form. At this moment in time, it has caused as much, if not more, harm than it has positive evolution. And the parts of our older intelligence, the reptilian brain and all the other parts of the body that we have in common with animals, that's our older intelligence. And most older intelligence have qualities of wisdom to it.
Well, it proved it works.
Yeah, it works because that intelligence is all about how to be in right relationship to your ecosystem,
mm-hmm.
your community.
Right.
And humans are a pack animal. So we have to be in right relationship to our community to survive, which is why this moment and the work that I do brings up so much shame, and rage. And we can talk a little bit about how those are also somatic intelligences, not liabilities. But what I'm trying to do with this practice is invite people back into the resource of that old intelligence so that they can remember themselves to how to be in right relationship to their ecosystem. We all know how to do it.
Remember. Let's reconnect the pieces.
Yeah. We know how to do this. And you've heard me say this in training. I'm not teaching people anything new. What I'm doing is giving them questions and pathways to remember themselves to the intelligence that is indigenous to every single human being. It is our indigenous intelligence to be in right relationship to our ecosystem. But we've been socialized to do something else. And now we have to do the work to recultivate that. And this is one of the tools that we like to use as a foundation, one of many, but one of the foundational tools that we use. So, yeah. So let me lead a short one.
Okay.
And I invite anyone who's listening, if you want to do this, feel free. And it's often encouraged to be done standing so you can really get in your body, but it can be done seated or laying down. Just really try to uncross your legs or anything like that. I'm going to stand up and do it. So I invite you to just take a stretch, give your body a nice stretch. And as you do, invite your breath to deepen. And as your breath deepens, invite your knees and your belly and your jaw to soften. Maybe softening your gaze or closing your eyes, whichever is more comfortable. And allowing your inhale to be a practice of entrusting yourself to the incredible intelligence and support of your very own skin. Our skin is highly relational. It connects us. It feels. It discerns us. It protects us. It's brilliant. We don't have to do anything, and it's doing it for us. So can you take a moment and just recognize that and actually give up all the effort that you do and just let your skin do it and just be held by it and rest. And as you continue to do that with your inhales, I invite you to also use your exhales to entrust the weight of everything contained within your skin to the unconditional support of the earth below you. Maybe even imagining dropping roots that get longer and stronger with each exhale, really anchoring you in that unconditional hold, gravity, right? The earth is always holding us tight, always catching us when we fall, always feeding us, always teaching us. What a gift. So can you again give up effort and just let yourself be held by that and anchor yourself in that with some roots? And staying anchored in those roots, can you now rise and fill into the length of your body, really entrusting yourself to your skeletal system, which is actually designed to have you stand tall, rise up, take a stand, so to speak, on behalf of the things that you love. This is the dimension of dignity. We are designed to show up in this way. And it's actually not a lot of effort if we just uncontract and let the spine do its thing. So can you find your version of that and rest in that? And then similarly, can you breathe and fill into the depths of your body? Start with the back. Really fill the whole back side of your skin from your heels to your head. Do the same with the front. And I like to think of what's behind us is where we connect with our ancestry, our experience, our well of experience, good and bad. The good and the bad helps us to be more skillful in the present. If we disassociate from our bad experiences, the times when we were unskillful, our ancestors were unskillful, we're likely to repeat the mistakes. If we stay connected to the good and the bad, our trauma experiences, if we can stay consciously connected to that and allow that to inform our choices consciously, we will make better choices in the present and the future. So connect to that through the back And as you feel towards the front, that's where the unknown of the future lies. And for a lot of people, that's uncomfortable. And I want to invite us to feel how hopeful that is. We can shape it. It is not yet set in stone. It is ours to determine. And I want to invite you to feel your accountability to future generations that also lie ahead of you. Imagine what they're asking of you to do in your moments of time that you're responsible for, the present, so that they can have a just, equitable, safe existence on the planet. That's what the front is about. And then our practice is to be in between the past and the future, between the back and the front, in the present, with as much presence as we can there. And similarly, by the way, I notice this is not so much of a short practice. I'm going to keep going because we're almost done. I invite you to breathe and fill into your width. And that is our design to actually take up space. And in taking up space, what I mean by that is to impact and be impacted by everybody that stands by you in the present, allies and adversaries alike. We are designed to impact and be impacted by every single living being. That's how the ecosystem works. It's brilliant that we're designed to do all that. We are all designed to do all that. But how do we do that consciously, choicefully, skillfully? Part of it is just actually just embodying it. It's our design. We actually know how to do it. We've just been doing something else. And then just take a few breaths, letting those different dimensions, down and up, front and back, side to side, and the skin's containment. Let those different dimensions impact and be impacted by one another, and seeing how they build resilience, and see if they might even invite invite all of those dimensions to be a little more expressed and a little bit more at ease because of the intersection of their differences. And how that's a metaphor for how to be in right relationship with their ecosystem. We are more resilient. We can be more expressed, and we can be more at ease if we can figure out how to be in right relationship with difference. And that starts inside. And then as you do that, the invitation now is to take a moment and find a sensation that's present in your body. And sensations are usually characterized by a location, maybe the heel or the shoulder. They often have qualities of temperature, warm or cool. They sometimes have shape qualities like round or sharp or hard. And they sometimes have movement qualities like tingling or pulsing. So just find one sensation that's kind of asking for your attention, and direct your attention there by noting to yourself its location and a couple of those qualities. And Michael, I'll invite you to share yours. And if the listeners were in relationship with other folks and community with other folks, you might invite them to share those. And then as the listener, the invitation is let yourself be impacted by what they share. See how you take that on as a practice to let yourself be impacted by what someone else shares. So Michael, I'm going to invite you to share. I'm going to let myself be impacted, and then I will share a sensation and let you be impacted. So share when you're ready, Michael.
All right. So I think I referenced earlier that I was having a pounding in my right temple. It shifted to my upper jaw, like my teeth on my upper jaw, like on the right side particularly, but running all the way to the left. I can feel the above my teeth, the jaw. And it's as if my heart, when my heart beats, I can feel it there. But it isn't just in there. It does go up into my temple and then down my neck and into my right shoulder. Yeah, that's it.
That brought my attention to my head as well. And it's almost like that lower ridge on the back of your skull, almost like there's like a little shelf. It feels particularly hard, like it's made of something like bone. But it feels like it's holding, it almost feels like I have my head tilted back, like it's holding extra weight. Like all the weight of my head is being held by that little place. So it feels a little bit strained in the outer corners of it. Not like it's overburdened, but that it's working. Yeah. So, yeah.
Yeah. Well, that was good. Thank you.
Well,
It brought up a lot of thoughts for me and memories and connections to what's going on in the world. And I'd like to share them. So when I first started working with you, we would do this, and there was a resistance. You'll remember a resistance in me. And that resistance, I think, was a manifestation of this need to distance from feeling that I carry because of my own nuclear family issues and a legacy that runs back through my ancestors. And when you were talking about the feelings in the back, when you brought the attention to our backs and our ancestors, and you said the good and the bad, I really thought about my mother who died 30 days ago, and all the emotion connected with that, but also the box that she left for me and my sister and brother that contains the documents from her ancestors owning slaves in Mississippi up until the Civil War, when their place was burned and slaves were freed and their lives changed. But I think that there has to be in my body a sense of all of that and a shame and a fear that used to hobble me and was part of my resistance. Now, through the work with you and the work I've done subsequently with prisoners and formerly incarcerated men, I have much more come to terms with it and willingness to feel it, and can't even separate, what the new feelings are and what the ancestral feelings are. It's all mixed up. Who the fuck knows? I don't even care in a certain way. What I know is that as I have allowed myself to feel and to so unfreeze, going back to this idea of that officer who killed George Floyd, I mean, the coldness on his face, the coldness, I can relate to that. I had a coldness in my life for so long, so much fear of feeling because I didn't want to cry or I didn't want to hurt. But as I have been aided by you and others to feel and to go into the feeling, my life has gotten better. I have healed and I've had more dignity and the ability to actually create relationships like I have with you that I didn't have in the past because the shame was blocking me from people of color or certain women. It's very, very interesting. It's an antidote. That moment, that exercise, that practice is an antidote actually to the coldness that allows me and others to harm other people. That's what came up for me.
Yeah. Can I ask you, Michael, what sensations present as you share that on a
Oh, my heart's beating.
podcast?
Yeah. My heart is beating very quickly. I feel vulnerable.
Sensation, Michael.
The sensation is that pounding heart. Boom, 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 boom. I can feel it on my chest. Warmth on the middle of my chest, above my heart. Warmth.
Yeah.
And a rapidly beating heart.
And do you know, Michael, why it is that I would encourage you to share a sensation and not
a feeling?
A feeling?
Yeah, because when I start describing feelings, I remember this from early on. When we worked together, I would go into my head, and it changes it for me anyway.
Yeah. Can I say a little bit about that?
Please.
Yeah, it feels like, in our trajectory of feeling, first we have story. I hate that person. They're an idiot. I don't want to work with them. That's the easiest feeling. That's the easiest to feel.
Mm-hmm.
The next level is feeling. I feel sad. I feel angry. I feel frustrated. A little bit harder than a little bit harder than the first one. But there's something about often when I'm feeling something, often when I'm feeling sad, I'm actually also feeling angry, and I'm also feeling confused, and I'm also feeling so many other things. But I usually pick the one that either feels most appropriate, maybe feels safest, maybe feels most effective.
Mm-hmm.
But in picking one or even two, I've just sort of disassociated myself from the other ones that I may not have as much familiarity with. I may not even have a name for. And sensations are the raw data of what we're feeling. And it's that raw data, which is the language that allows for the common denominator of relatedness between different human beings. We all have bodies. And the reality is, if we didn't all have bodies, it would not be hard to be alive in this moment.
Mm-hmm.
We wouldn't feel pain. We wouldn't feel fear. We wouldn't feel sadness. We wouldn't feel rage. If we didn't feel those sensations, this would be easy. Mm-hmm. But we all feel it, and it's the experience of sensations in the body that has us actually all be the same. Mm-hmm. And the difference is how much sensation we all feel. We're capable of feeling, willing to feel, but we all have it. And so to me, I like going to the raw data because truthfully, unless you're a psychopath, if you hear someone say, my heart is pounding, and you're at all embodied, you can't really hear that and not remember what it's like to have your heart pound and then adjust your own body as if your heart was pounding so it becomes easier, as a way of making it easier for that person to feel it and keep going. Mm-hmm. To not have to retract from it, but to move into it. And so it's an important piece. And again, once we start titling it and saying, I feel this or that, we start to cheapen that connection point.
Mm-hmm. Well, when you were speaking, I was thinking, when I hear people talk about what they're feeling in their body, it's so much more, it's so much easier to empathize.
Exactly.
You connect because you share.
Yeah.
You share. Sadly, I'm aware of the time. It's gone fast, but we have a bit more time, and I wanted to, with your permission, because I don't want to cut off something important that's going on in the conversation, but I also want to make sure that people get, the people will listen all the way to the end of this because it is important.
Sure.
So I guess we've touched on a lot of things that I was hoping we'd touch on, just the way it emerged. But I want to end with a question to you about what you would perceive as progress in this moment for our nation.
There's so many things. Everything feels like such an interesting question that I can't just give a simple answer to anymore. Because we don't live in simple times, and we never did. But somehow we all felt like we did. I felt like we did, except felt simpler.
Well, the numbness makes it easy to think of it simply.
Yeah. I think before I answer that question, it feels important to say that no matter how much good progress is being made, it's nowhere near close to being enough. Mm-hmm. So I hesitate to share this, largely knowing who your audience is, for fear that they will hear it as an opportunity to let themselves off the hook. Oh, we're making progress. This is great. Uh-huh. My biggest fear in this moment in time, this political moment in time, as I think about the elections coming up, my biggest concern is that people who are often not uncomfortable are now uncomfortable because racism is so in their face and so many other injustices are so in their face that they're active. But if we start electing folks that allow us to go back to feeling comfortable or allow privileged folks to go back to being comfortable, the speed of change that is necessary will decline. And we cannot afford that.
Wow. May I jump in here for a minute, because you said something
please.
at the beginning that struck me, but that maybe this isn't even the right question to deal with right now. I mean, what I like, what feels true and important is that we can't let ourselves, I can, as a white male, cannot let myself off the hook. Because you said it earlier in the conversation, it's so easy for a white person to feel complacent or to allow themselves to not risk whatever it is they need to risk in order to be part of or to become anti-racist. That was really critical said, and it made me think about all the places that I still need to move. I think that is the key. That is what I want to share with the folks that listen to this program, or our colleagues and allies, and my family. I think of my sister and brother and our legacy and what we need to do for ourselves to heal that thing in us, but also to be part of the healing that has to happen in the nation.
Can I add two things to that?
Please. Yeah, go for it.
I often get this very awkward question, but it's amazing how often I get asked this. As a white ally, if there was one thing I could do that would make me a good white ally, what would it be? And despite the fact that that question is somewhat infuriating, because it shouldn't be what's one thing, but it's a great starting point. The answer is, and you sort of answered it, but I want to say it a little bit differently, is when society is being called out, called in, to me, the difference between called out and called in is how skillfully it's done. And the responsibility is on the listener to hear the invitation. So it might be said unskillfully, and it might feel like, you said that rude, or you're calling me names. Let that part go. Find the invitation in it, right? And be called in. And when you hear someone calling people, again, in or out, do not listen from, are they talking to me? Don't try to figure out how to get yourself off the hook. Find out how to get yourself on that hook. Find out how that hook is speaking to you. What piece of that hook is yours? And then figure out how to keep yourself on that hook until everybody, every single living being has the privilege to walk away from the discomfort of this moment. Because as long as you're letting yourself off the hook when you've had too much, or I can't deal with it anymore, you've just exercised your privilege in irresponsible ways, in ways that others do not have the ability to do. So strive to figure out, how can I literally choose suffering, choose pain and discomfort, so that the burden of pain and discomfort is distributed. And actually, if you want to have an equity conversation, choose more pain and discomfort, because you can choose it.
Right.
So choose as much as you can as a gesture of equity in the distribution of suffering and pain related to all the isms on the planet, until all people are free. Wow.
I have chills now. I have chills, because that is a great place to end this conversation, this dialogue. Miakoda, thank you.
Michael.
Thank you. This has been beautiful, enriching, and healing for me.
Yeah. Thank you for the opportunity, Michael.
Thank you. I love you too. Take care.
Yeah.
Hey, this is Michael. As you know, Flipping the Table is sponsored by Roots of Change. You can keep our program going by making a contribution to Roots of Change through our website, rootsofchange.org.